Pakistan's recent attacks on civilians in Afghanistan in the guise of targeting Tehreek-e-Taliban or Pakistani Taliban targets has created an international furor. The United Nations mission in Afghanistan says that dozens of people, including women and children, have been killed as a result of these airstrikes just a few days ago, which came at a time when Pakistan's special envoy to Afghanistan, the recently reappointed Mohammad Sadiq, was having meetings with the Afghan Taliban leadership over the next course of action as far as Pakistan's security concerns were concerned. To get an idea of this, I'm joined once again by a friend of the show, Sangar Paykhar. He's the host of Afghan Eye Podcast. Thank you so much, Sangar, for joining us. Why now? What is the reaction that is coming out? We know the reaction coming out of the Afghan Taliban leadership, but what's in their mindset right now, given what Pakistan has done with these attacks?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Ali. It's good to speak to you again. What I've gathered so far from people currently in Kabul, but also some people who are in authority in the current government, is that they are at a very critical moment right now in their relationship with Pakistan, because on the one hand, they feel like they've tried everything to resolve these tensions, and on the other hand, they cannot risk any further escalations with any neighbors because of the relationship the current government has with the international community. So they are more or less caught in a very difficult situation because their options are limited. And the camps in Afghanistan are divided. So on the one hand, we have a segment of the current ruling government, the Taliban government, that is very hardline, and they're saying basically we have to retaliate. And we've heard reports of some skirmishes along the Durand Line in Paktika and Khost recently in the last few days. And these hardline voices within the Taliban movement, they are basically saying that if we do not respond in kind towards Pakistan, Pakistan will further escalate and use more opportunities to basically exert their power and their influence in the region and show that they can violate the Afghan sovereignty whenever they want. But on the same matter, we have another side within the government in Afghanistan and in the intelligentsia in Afghanistan, and they're basically saying that the TTP is a matter of concern, is a matter of legitimate concern, and it needs to be resolved via dialogue. And when incidents like the one that we witnessed recently in Paktika happen, what they advocate for is that more efforts needs to be done from the Afghan side to accommodate dialogue. But as we spoke with one another almost a year ago, we sort of alluded to this matter before. It's that efforts to facilitate dialogue, all those efforts have been done since the Taliban established their government in Afghanistan. They've tried many times to facilitate dialogue, but at the same time, we see that those efforts for dialogue are not really productive. I saw one of your recent episodes of your show where you explained how the initiative to start a dialogue came from General Bajwa. And this point was also stressed by some Afghan political commentators, saying that, well, if they wanted to have the dialogue and they initiated the dialogue, they, in this case, is the Pakistani military, and we have facilitated them, but nothing has materialized. So what else is there that we can do? And gives us this bottom line that the hardliners in Afghanistan, the ones who are saying, you know what, our efforts have not materialized into anything substantial. The only language that Pakistan understands is retaliation, so that's why we have to retaliate. Those people are basically having the upper hand in the dialogue in Afghanistan on this matter. They're basically saying, look, all these other efforts did not result into anything fruitful. So we just need to hold on to this hardline position. You attack, we retaliate, and we do whatever it is that is necessary. So, in my calculation, this is currently the most volatile and concerning situation so far, because hard lines on both sides are basically dominating the conversation.
There's a context to all of this. You mentioned that we spoke about 1 year ago. In this past year, 1,000 Pakistani security forces and civilians have been killed in attacks that have been claimed by the Pakistani Taliban as well as ISIS or Daesh, which the Afghan Taliban is fighting as well. This current round, and yes, we've been having this conversation quite a bit, that what was the reason to get Pakistani Taliban or their families moved from Afghanistan back to Pakistan at the end of the American occupation of Afghanistan. So there's a timeline to follow here. The first admission comes in October 2021 by Imran Khan that talks are underway. Before that, we saw General Faiz Hamid go to Kabul, where Sirajuddin Haqqani, as a mediator, mediates talks between the Pakistani Taliban and the Pakistani Taliban, the Pakistan Army leadership led by General Faiz Hamid. Then we see Imran Khan removed in April 2022, and by June or July, General Bajwa and Faiz Hamid, who's by then the Peshawar Corps commander, hold a meeting with parliamentarians and tell them that we are now in the process of repatriating Pakistani Taliban families back to Pakistan areas, Waziristan, and so on and so forth. And we've assigned up to ₹1 billion to set up shop or whatever businesses for these people so that they can move back in. So this is a process that had been going on for quite some time. It's not like something that just appeared and Imran Khan was the catalyst for this. This is a military or Pakistan military initiative that didn't turn out well or didn't turn out well at all.
Exactly. And if I may add, the vast majority of the so-called refugee camps on the Afghan side of the Durand Line are refugee camps of primarily Waziristani people who have fled Pakistan during Zarb-e Azb. So the operation that was about a decade ago in Waziristan forced quite a lot of people to flee to Paktika, to Khost, to Paktia. And these settlements, they have been there for the last 10 years. And in the last 10 years, there have been numerous occasions where the Pakistani military has attacked these settlements on the grounds that they are places where the TTP gathers and they launch attacks into the tribal areas of Pakistan. But so far, what we have seen from people on the ground, I've actually traveled close to the places where a fence is built along the Durand Line. I've traveled in Paktia and Paktika. I've been to Gyan and all those areas. And when you are in that region, what you notice is that first and foremost, people on both sides of the Durand Line, they're ethnically and culturally very similar. And if you bump into someone who has fled from that side of the Durand Line to this side of the Durand Line, and they're currently living in one of those villages, you don't really know, is this person from Waziristan or is this person from Khost or Paktia? So they have sort of more or less mixed with the local community. So these attacks by the Pakistani military, they are interpreted in Afghanistan not just merely an attack on refugees from Waziristan. Basically, in Afghanistan, they're saying, look, Pakistan is attacking and killing Afghans. That's why you see people protesting in Khost and in Gardez. People have come out in the streets the last few days protesting. And they're basically saying that Pakistan is, attacking our people. They're killing our people. The dialogue, the discourse in Afghanistan is not Pakistan is attacking TTP or Pakistan is retaliating against militants. That's not how it's interpreted by the people in Afghanistan or Afghans in general, even in the diaspora. The way it is interpreted is Pakistan is attacking and killing Afghans. That's the bottom line. And when you have a situation like this, when one country conducts an attack and the other one interprets this as you are basically killing Afghans, obviously it results in a situation where people basically say, this is all out war. So there are people who are saying we have to basically go to war. And this is not the sentiment of people who are in charge in Afghanistan. This is not the sentiment of all Taliban, as I previously explained. But the hardliners in Afghanistan are increasingly gaining momentum because saying, well, peace doesn't really work with Pakistan because they are so hostile towards Afghanistan. And as you pointed out, during the period when Imran Khan was still in office, the efforts that were made on both sides to, reach to some kind of consensus, those efforts have totally evaporated. And current discourse in Afghanistan is that the intelligence agency of the Taliban, GDI, and many other sources, they have confirmed that these ISKP attacks that have been occurring in Afghanistan, where even a minister from the current government has been assassinated, they're saying that these ISKP elements, they are based in Balochistan in Pakistan. Pakistan is facilitating ISKP in Afghanistan, and they are using ISKP as an instrument to destabilize Afghanistan. So on the one hand, we have this TTP problem for Pakistan, and on the other hand, we have the ISKP problem for Afghanistan. So both countries have reason to accuse one another of supporting some militant group that is currently waging war or conducting attacks. But what seems to be a mystery is where is this all going towards? Like, how will this situation further escalate? In my estimation, it looks like the situation will only deteriorate further because now we see even a whole discourse on social media, and some Pakistani commentators have also been saying that Pakistan needs to occupy the Wakhan corridor, which is a part in the northeast of Afghanistan that borders China, Tajikistan, and Pakistan. And that discourse is now even being picked up by many Afghans. They're now saying we need to mobilize troops along the Durand Line and facilitate, a support base for the Wakhan corridor if in case Pakistan tries to occupy it. But I would say I'm more interested in your analysis. Like, why do you think that this escalation is going in this direction? Do you sense that this is maybe somehow related to internal problems in Pakistan with PTI and other political challenges, or do you think that this is solely related to those 1,000 people that have been killed in the last year due to TTP attacks?
Well, it's an interesting question, and I think building on what we spoke about almost a year ago, the situation in Pakistan has only worsened in that 1 year, or even in the past 10 months. We've had an assault on the judiciary, where the judiciary has been completely neutered, all powers taken away. We've had an assault on the constitution where the constitution has been butchered and mutated to such an extent where the term limits for the chiefs, for the appointments of the chiefs, have been changed. Accountability has been stripped. We call this the 26th Amendment. There were people that were abducted from inside Parliament to pass this legislation. We have had a shrinking of space where journalists have been abducted and forced into, writing confessions on what they were doing and what they were not doing. We've had a massacre in the middle of Pakistan's capital by allegedly or not, by Pakistan's own military establishment. These are unprecedented things. Yes, the Pakistan military carried out assassinations, killings in Balochistan, KP, elsewhere on the peripheries. But the fact that an unknown number of people were gunned down in the middle of Islamabad, Pakistan's capital, on the 26th of November, and then bodies were hidden or corpses were hidden or efforts were made to scrub the crime scene, goes to show that the pressure is only mounting. And now with Donald Trump coming in, and obviously there's an Afghanistan connection in this as well, because it was Trump who signed the US Taliban deal with in Doha with the help and support of the Pakistanis at the time, which had a civilian facade of Imran Khan, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, but obviously the Pakistan army was involved. And now you have a Pakistan army that is taking vengeance or targeting its own people, so that that latent veneer of acceptability or legitimacy is now gone. And when you talk about 1,000 people, Pakistani soldiers being killed in the past year in these TTP attacks, most recently the 16 killed in Waziristan that led then to these attacks in Paktika and Paktia. And keep in mind, obviously, Paktika and Paktia have a large Zadran tribal presence, the same as on the other side of Pakistan and Waziristan, so on and so forth. And the Zadrans are from where the current Haqqani leadership comes from. And as you mentioned, the patriarch of which, Khalil Haqqani, the Minister for Refugees, was assassinated in a ISKP Daesh operation. So there are a lot of moving elements, and obviously there's a lot of resentment in Afghanistan, as you rightly mentioned as well. But the resentment in Pakistan is now not just against outsiders; it's also against insiders, Pakistanis themselves. And there's a concerted effort to brand people, Pashto-speaking Pakistanis, as non-Pakistanis, as Afghans. Anyone from KP, for example, is picked up, branded an Afghan, and thrown in jail till due process catches up. So there are a lot of disconnects that are happening in Pakistani society at this moment. And the reason for those disconnects is the decisions that have been taken by the Pakistani military leadership that are essentially unconstitutional. These are unconstitutional steps. So when you don't have that legitimacy inside or within your ranks or within your country, then you become an easy target for everyone outside, and you don't know where the bullets are flying from. Very quickly, I want to round this all up, and I'll come on your show as well, Sangar, if you want. We can talk about this in detail.
Definitely.
But I want your assessment. It's been 3.5 years of the Taliban IEA, Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, in Kabul, in Kandahar. There are a lot of disconnects within the Afghan Taliban leadership. As you said, there are people with an extreme point of view that want more aggression. There are people that want women's education, but these voices are muzzled. So, in your assessment, where does Afghanistan stand 3.5 years after the Americans left and since the Afghan Taliban took over again?
In my assessment, Afghanistan has made some progress internally, but in many ways, Afghanistan we're basically running into a deadlock on many issues, social issues, but also political issues. So as you mentioned, the women's education matter and women's rights issues, they are very polarizing, and the polarizing nature of these decisions by the leadership of the Taliban has caused a sense of disillusion because while Afghanistan has made many gains in the last 3.5 years, diplomatic relations, trade relations with China, with Russia, Putin announced that he will remove the Taliban from the list of terrorist organizations. There are commerce and trade relations with the Central Asian republics, even with Azerbaijan. Afghanistan is increasingly becoming independent from its connection with Pakistan, because in the past, as you know very well, most of the commerce and trade to and from Afghanistan went through Pakistan. But now these railways are being built, and Afghanistan is being connected with Central Asia, with India. Some Afghan, freight trains have even reached Istanbul recently. China is heavily involved in extraction of oil and gas in northern Afghanistan. So while these developments are providing people in Afghanistan a hope of a more prosperous and stable future, matters related to women's education and women's rights are still very polarizing, and people are disillusioned because this is not what they expected, especially, as you mentioned, during the Doha negotiations. The representatives of the Taliban assured that women's education, women's right to work, everything will be guaranteed. But now we see increasing limitations for women with regards to work and education. But at the same time, what we have also observed is that the new Trump administration has selected a number of figures that will have key positions in the Trump administration, who are more or less known for their, belligerent and more hawkish stance towards Afghanistan and the Middle East in general. And some Afghans who are opposed to the Taliban, they hope that this new Trump administration will somehow facilitate an armed opposition to the Taliban, which in my assessment...
Very quickly, you mentioned this armed opposition, but the recent attacks by Pakistan
Yes.
on Paktika seems to have united or glossed over a lot of these or some of these issues. We have Amrullah Saleh, who's come out against the Pakistanis. So the Pakistani factor seems to be uniting Afghan factions to an extent. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It does. And as you mentioned, Amrullah Saleh and figures like him, they are opposed to the Taliban, but at the same time, they need to, have a nationalist narrative that appeals to all Afghans. And what unites all Afghans is that they are opposed to any kind of aggression from Pakistan. And I think that what the Pakistani military has done has further deteriorated its relationship with Afghanistan, but it has also united a lot of people. So we have to wait and see how this situation further evolves. But before we end, I'm very curious to know one thing about the new Trump administration. What do you think that the relationship of this new administration will be with Pakistan, especially concerning this new administration's selection of certain people like Grenell and others? How would you interpret this development?
There are many factors to this. There's a very good question, Sangar, that you ask. There are many layers to it. On the face of it, and I think Trump in the first term as well was an anti-establishment character, right? He said, I'm going to go after the establishment in the US. I'm going to go after the FBI. I'm going to go after the intelligence agencies. I'm going to go after USAID. I'm going to go after the bureaucracy, right? And there's a lot of fear that is built into the system that these things will happen, right? But at the same time, some of Trump's policies are also very pro-American establishment, especially on Israel, for example. And a lot of these positions, or some of these positions, have changed in the past 4 years. So you might have a more pragmatic Donald Trump as opposed to a ideologically revenge-driven Donald Trump. Having said this, we haven't seen this sort of activity in US Pakistan relations, at least in my lifetime. Maybe around 2001, after the September 11 attacks, we saw this activity or the stance by the Americans of with us or against us. But since then, in the past 25 years or 24 years, now with what Rick Grinnell has been doing on Pakistani social media, he's specifically targeting military touts, military talking points, mouthpieces, naming and shaming them, and all with the undercurrent of free Imran Khan. Now, would Imran Khan approve of all of this? Maybe not. What is interesting is, and I had a conversation with Rick Grinnell's, one of his close friends from when he was a politician in California, and this is what he said. His name was Grizz Ali, and Grizz Ali told me that after the Americans left, or once the Americans were pulling out, and Trump administration and Rick Grinnell and all these guys were watching from the sidelines because Biden was in charge, there was a lot of pain and a lot of anxiety after the Americans abandoned Bagram Air Base. And we know how important Bagram was, not just the detention facility, but also because it had a landing strip built by, when the Soviets were there. So it has a lot of significance. And the fact that the Americans or the Biden administration decided to abandon Bagram became a very sore point for a lot of the US defense establishment. So the establishment was torn from within. And because they abandoned Bagram, they went to Pakistan and told them, listen, we need operational facilities in Pakistan. To which Imran Khan said, absolutely not. Right? Even though the military establishment at the time was on board, had facilitated, and I know this firsthand because through my contacts in the Pakistan Air Force back then, they said that we opened all bandwidths for American and NATO aircraft on General Bajwa's dictation. But that was 2021. And there was a lot of hurt for members of the current Trump administration against Pakistan for not giving them military facilities after abandoning Bagram. Despite all of this, you have a character like Rick Grinnell, who is now crusading to free Imran Khan. Now, the Pakistanis say this is a result of lobbying efforts. There were a lot of lobbying efforts because the Pakistani military establishment had completely sided with the Biden administration, thought Trump was completely irrelevant, and a lot of that ideology or a lot of that narrative was built around, oh, Trump and Imran Khan are the same. They're both populists cut from the same cloth or the same mold. But everything comes full circle. And if that has come full circle, then the Pakistani military establishment has cut its feet, its nose, its hands, or cut its nose to spite the face. And if you cut your nose to spite your own face, then the people looking from the outside, be it Biden or Trump or the Afghans or anyone else or the Indians, they'll be like, all right, these people don't have anything to stand on their own. They're cutting their own people. They're jailing them. They're abusing them. So it's a free-for-all. There is no state. There is no writ. All things being equal, I think there's still a lot more shock because the establishment in the US is a $840 billion a year military industrial complex, right? And nobody's going to give away that power just like that. So the fight, I think, is long and hard. And there are a lot of anomalies within the system, within the incoming Trump administration that might make it hard for both Imran Khan and the people of Pakistan and the military establishment. And if the situation is hard on both, then the military establishment of the junta in power, with all the state power at its disposal, can unleash even more terror against the people. Because the US administration will be focused on other things. Will be focused on cleaning up ranks within, will be focused on cutting down the size of the bureaucracy, will be focused on other identity-related issues in the United States, which will give some sort of space or some sort of vacuum to the Pakistani military to create a further authoritarian state because they won't have the same largesse coming from either the United States or China.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I think, we still need to have another conversation about what we both expect from the new Trump administration. So I would love to have you on our show in near future, and then we can continue this conversation and discuss more matters, because this current situation is further evolving. We don't know what's going to happen in the next few days.
Absolutely. And next 3 weeks are very crucial. Anytime Sangar Paykhar, host of the Afghan Eye Podcast, do follow it. Amazing content all the time. Always a pleasure, Sangar. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Situation between Pakistan, Afghanistan deteriorating at a rapid pace just ahead of the incoming Trump administration. What do you think will happen? Let me know in the comment section. Do like, subscribe, and share this content. Take care of yourself. Goodbye.